And now we are going through the second point. Uh, and under this, we'll try to understand or identify what are the options we have to automate the case or the case support process, and also, I mean, through different mechanism or tools. So we have case assignment rule, as the name suggests. As the name, it's plain simple English. Like, you create a case, and it gets assigned to certain people or queue. Next is auto response, so meaning you do something and the system is capable of sending you the response with right content. So it's called auto response rule. Then there is escalation rule, meaning if something has not happened for a certain period of time, then you wanted to escalate the case, okay, or the query. Web to case and email to case, I had explained it a bit about them just theoretically, but so far the practical aspect is done. I will leave it to the trailhead module. They have explained it in a step-by-step format. I can give you the link how you can try on this, but from theoretical point of view, I had given the information which is needed. But anyways, you can go through the trailhead module. And then there is a concept of case team. So like the name says, on a given case, you have the capability to create a team where people can work together. So sometimes a case may belongs to multiple team, right? Let's say there is a case, let's say some HR related cases has been created, and as a part of that, you wanted to also get the IT feedback. For example, when an employee leaves a company, right? That employee has to get. I'm just giving you an example. So that employee has to get sign off from other departments, right? So in that case, when a case is created, then that case can have people from different teams, and they can be added under case team. So I will show you where this case team is on the case record. So we'll go through the second point, and we'll see if we have time, then we'll move on to the next topic. Okay, now let's go back to the org and try to understand this. So I'm on the case object, and in the last meeting we had created two record types. One is HR and other is IT related queries. Okay, so let's try to think of a use case. So we are going to first understand case assignment. Case record types we have understood, case support process and case settings and case comments. So as an assignment, when someone creates a case, so let's say when I go to create a case, right, what do we see at the moment? So let's go to a case tab, go to the case tab, and click on new case. So what I need to do is that when an IT related queries are raised, then it should be sent to the IT queue, right? I don't want a case which belongs to a given department to be routed to a different department. No, right? So that's not a good experience, right? In that case, either the case may be sitting in the queue for a longer period, or there may be a lot of redirection until that case reaches the right queue. So to have a smooth case support process in terms of this case getting handled or assigned to the right queue, it's good to create a case assignment rule. Okay, so my use case is that, and before that, let's understand what is the situation uh, on the existing case records. So I need to know who is the current owner of the existing cases. Okay, so let's go to all list view, all open cases. Okay, why I don't see the IT related cases? Okay, it has been closed. Let me change it to working so that it appears in my one list all open cases. Okay, so now you can see who is the owner, case owner alias. Okay, so you know the alias, right? On every user there is an alias. So again, this is unique. So yes, this is my alias. So I'm the owner of this case. Okay, so at the moment I'm the owner of all the cases. Why? Because there were no any assignment rule in the system. So now for the very first time we are going to create, and what we'll do that any cases where the record type is like IT related queries. So if a case belongs to IT or HR, I need those cases to be routed to respective queue. So IT query should go to IT queue, HR query should go to HR queue, and any other queries should be normally assigned to the default user. Okay, so now here are two things. One, I'm saying that any case should go to the IT queue, but as of now, we have not created any queue in the system. So the very first step is to, if you get any requirement, right? So very first step, check, requirement in terms of this particular use case where you have to create an assignment rule or where you have to identify who is the right owner of this case. So the very first thing is to check if there is, the existing queue in the system or not. Existing queue meaning your use case is to assign IT queries to IT team. Let me go back to Google Jamboard. So I'm going to use this, and we are also using this for the very first time. So let's try this. So I need the IT queries to go to IP queue. Expand it. Okay. And HR queries to HR queue. Okay. And default means any other queries. It should be defaulted to or go to the default user, or you can say a default queue. It depends. So a case, a record can, in general, the principle is a record can be owned by a user or a queue. So a case can be assigned to a user or a queue. Now try to recall during one of our previous sessions, so where I think I had explained this about queues and all. So a queue is a group of user. Okay, so a group of user who may belongs to different roles or any other groups. Okay, so let's try to understand this first from the UI. So in the setup, you search for queue, open it up, and try to see what all user types or entities can be part of queue. Okay. So we don't have any such queue as of now, but let us read out the text here, the information. Queue allow group of users to manage a shared workload more effectively. Okay, so notice the keyword shared workload. Okay, so something which is being assigned to a queue, it means that particular task or the assignment is is shared with all the users within that group. Okay, so that's why it says it is used to manage something as a shared workload. Now a queue is a location where records can be routed to, okay, which awaits processing by the group member. So once it is assigned to a queue, one of the group member in the queue can own that particular record or can take up the accountability of that record or that case in this case. The records remain in the queue until a user accepts them for processing or they are transferred to another queue. So it remains in the queue, let's say queue. Let's go back to so if it is IT related queries, it will be sent to IT queues and it will be sitting into that queue until someone from the IT queue takes the ownership. Or let's say you have defined an escalation rule. If a certain case is not owned for 2 days or for a week, it is assigned back to or it is forwarded to a different queue. So that also can be done. This is what it says here. Until a user accepts or they are transferred to another queue. So you can specify a set of objects that are supported by each queue. So keep this in mind that whenever you create a queue, you have to define which object in the system this queue is applicable for. We'll see when we click on new, as well as the set of users that are allowed to retrieve records from the queue, which makes sense, right? So click on new, and you can see, let's try to navigate through the setup. So the first thing is to provide the label, a queue name, a common queue email, and send email to the members. If you scroll down, the supported objects. So here you can select the object for which this queue will be applicable for. So now in our case it is a case, right? So let's search for case and bring it into the selected objects. Who are the members of the queue? So to add members to this queue, select a type of member and then choose the group role or users from the available members. So let's see, expand this search options, and here you see within a queue you can add a user, a role, you can add a user, which are simply users. You can add roles and subordinates. So roles and subordinates means any user who has CEO as a role and other role who are subordinates to this role CEO. Okay, so the whole hierarchy becomes a part of this queue. So that's what the subordinates means, a given role and all the subordinates who is reporting to this selected role. And if you go by role, then simply just user belonging to this role. There is no subordinates, so subordinates may not be a part of this queue. That's the meaning of roles and subordinates. And you can also include public groups as well. So again, public group is a group of users, but yeah. So if you have a group of users already created, you can simply add the group here, which will be a part of this queue. So I'm going to add the user, which is myself. You can also add any user who belongs to, do we have a support team here? Yeah. Let's add this one. Customer support. I also want to add any user which role is customer support and all other subordinates under this customer support. So you can have a mix of all of them, or you can configure just whatever your requirement is. Okay, now let's read on this text as well. So here you can enter the name of the queue and the email address to use when sending notifications. So for example, when a case has been put in this queue, I wanted to send a notification to the queue members. Okay, so you can check this send email to the queue members. The email address can be for an individual or a distribution list. Okay, so either a single email, you can enter it here of an individual, or you can enter the TL or the distribution list. When an object is assigned to a queue, only the queue members will be notified, which makes sense, right? Not all the members has to be notified, just the queue members. So let's add a queue called HR queue, and okay, this is since we have added support, so let's add it queue, save it, and create one HR queue and make it available for the case. I'm going to add myself as well. You can add, if you wish to. I'm just trying to point out that a queue can be a group of all these 4 options. Okay. But yeah, so based on requirement, you just configure it. Now that we have configured our queues, so let's go back to okay. So queue has been configured. Now, can you tell me how do we know where is this default user configured? As of now, you can see that I'm the default user, right? If I go to the case list, but I don't want myself to be the default case owner. I need, let's say, Ankit or you or someone to be a default user. So where I can set up this? I had pointed this in previous meeting. Okay, that makes sense. But let's say I don't want to create a queue. There is already a setting in the system where I can define that user. No, not in profile. So again, you'll have to do it for all the profiles in the system, whoever is working in the case. So go to support settings, and here remember I pointed out this default case owner. So this one. So here I can change it, not myself to someone else. Let's see, my second user. I'll save it. Okay. Okay. Now that we have configured the queues and configured the default user, let's try to think how we can configure the assignment tool. So again, come to this setup and search for assignment. Notice that you can create assignment on lead objects as well and case. This is again an exam question where what are the objects where you can create assignment rule. So you can create assignment rule only for lead and case. So keep in mind. So we go to case assignment rule since we are working on case, and as a default, Salesforce creates a standard rule. Okay, just read it out. So case assignment rule automatically assigns cases to users or queues based on the criteria you define here. You can create multiple rules, but only one rule can be active at a time. So you see, in our system, we just have one rule which is standard and it is active. But if you create another rule, then the other rule will become active and this will become inactive. Okay, so keep in mind. But within a given assignment rule, you can create multiple rule entries. So we'll see about that. If you open up this standard, so you see here that this is my rule name. There is a checkbox called active, and down below we can have multiple rule entries. So you see the orders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what happens when a case record is created and it is saved into the database? A transaction, some database transaction starts. Okay, and as a part of that transaction, the case assignment rule is also fired or executed. So when the case assignment rule executes, it tries to validate or check this criteria for each record in the same order. So if a record meets the criteria 1, it will be assigned to either whatever configuration you have done it, either a user or a queue, and that specific record will no more sent to the next entries. So once it satisfies a criteria, it will be assigned to that queue. It won't go to the next entries in that case assignment tool. Let's say there is another record which does not meet the first rule entries here. Again, it does not meet rule entries 2, 3, but it meets the rule entry 4, right? So it will be assigned to that user or queue, and then it won't move into the next entry criteria. So that's how the very first time the criteria is true, the record will be assigned to that, and it will be no more executed. But like you know, or you should know that in a bulk scenario, if there are 10 records or 200 records getting saved into the database at the same time, so in that case, some of the record may satisfies the first rule entries, some of may 2, some may satisfy 3, 4, and so on. It depends on the criteria. So accordingly, they will be routed to respective user or queue. Make sense? And if there is any record, or any record, even a single or any record, so any record which does not meet any one of these criteria, it may happen. So what should happen then? In that case, it will be assigned to the default workflow user, default case owner, which we configured on the case support setting. Understood? Okay. Sitara, you got it? Okay, so we don't want to take this standard assignment rule, so we are going to create our own. Click on new and just read this content. So after you create your rule and select it from the assignment rule list, add rule entries. So once you create here we just provide our name, like case assignment. I'm just giving it a name. Select it. You can give any meaningful name as per your company use cases or requirement. So once we create this rule, then we have to create rule entries, right? Rule entries contains the conditions and where we have to route. The assignment rule determines the record type when a case is created manually or imported without a specific record types. When no assignment rule applies, the record type of the case owner is used. Okay. When the default case owner is a queue, the queue's owner's default record type is used. Okay, mark it active. If you don't mark it active, then you can come back later and mark it active. But if you don't mark it active, it won't be executed. So make sure if you wanted to run it, it is active. Let me read out these last two lines because I think they are meaningful. So, if your organization uses record types, in our case, we are using case record types, right? The assignment rules determine the record type when the case is used manually or imported without a specific record type. So, it means the assignment rule checks the record type of the case. And when no assignment rules apply, the record type of the case owner is used. Understand. When the default case owner is a queue, the queue owner's default record type is used. Okay. So let's go to our in, so in our case, who is the default case owner? My user 2, right? So I'm going to my user 2. So how do we, so whoever is the owner, right? In that case, the owner's default record type is used to assign the record type of the case. So where you can find what is my default record type, so you find it on the user's profile. Okay. Let me check out one more thing. Looks like internet is slow. Here it is. So I'm taking my that statement for discussion here. So what I told previously, just a while back, is that on a user's profile you can define the default record type. So let's go to our user who is my second user, and I'm going to open up the profile of this user and go back to the record type section, which is record type settings here, and go to our cases here, click on edit. Okay, so down below you can see here, select the default record type for this user profile. The default record type is used when creating a new record on the case object. As of now, it's just the master, the global record type basically. But we have also created the other two, right? So let's bring it into the selected list. And here the default one is HR. Save it. Now if you go back to our setting here, now you can see HR related queries become default and IT related queries is not the default one. This is how we assign and default a record type on user profile. This is one thing. Now, how do we set up a default record type on the user level? So this is how we did. Click on the user icon or your user icon. Click on settings, and then you will be shown this page. Under display, you click on set default record types, and here you can see this thing. So just read it out. Check the appropriate box if you'd like the default record type selected automatically when creating a new record. Leave the box unchecked if you'd like to be prompted to select a record type when creating a new record. So here we have not checked this thing, right? So in that case, if you do not check this, so leave the box unchecked if we don't want to be prompted. So at the moment it is unchecked, right? And if you'd like to be prompted, so now it is unchecked. It means I should be prompted with a record type selection screen, right? Which is what happening at the moment. So when I click on new, I am prompted with record type selection screens. Now let's see what happens. Select it and save it. Now it is checked, so it says if it is checked, then in that case the default record type will be automatically selected. Now let's try to see what's the difference in behavior. Let me go back to the case. So here, now let me try to click on new. I should not have gone into this thing, but anyways. See, in the on the platform there are an innumerable number of settings. So as a beginner, we just need to know what is important at the moment, and then you can, when you try to walk or move ahead, then you can scale on top of it. So now you see I'm no more provided with the record type selection screen. Why? Because since I belongs to the IT department, right? Why, if I have to create a case, right? Why I should be prompted with this screen? It's a click, right? It's, yeah, two additional clicks or one additional clicks. So it increases. There is a term called AST. Okay, AST is called what? Average handling time. Average handling time. So if you know this, support process is very highly demanding in nature, where every seconds or every moment is important. So there are a lot of metrics to assess how a support process is going on, how your team or department is doing or handling the cases or requests from your customers. So that is very a very hectic, and the company or the organization expects people to minimize minimize the number of queries coming, or they want cases to be resolved as soon as possible. So if you have a number of clicks and a number of checks and things, manual checks to be done, in that case it adds up to the AST. So although for my profiles, okay, or for any user profiles, the record type have been assigned, like on this profile you see the two record types has been assigned, and HR related queries is the default ones. So if I am from an IT and I have to raise a case, I always want IT related queries to be raised, right? If someone is from HR, okay, then that person should be always raising an IT HR related cases. So what the person can do, the individual person, they can personalize this thing. So they go to their user icon, go to settings, and under settings you will find where is this? Not this one. Set default record types, and based on this checkbox, if it is checked, then you will not be prompted with record type selection screens. If it is unchecked, then you will be prompted with record type selection screen. Okay, so this is one settings. Okay, that's done. Now, and there may be certain users who has the privilege to create cases for any department, right? So they should not be, they should keep that uh, personalized checkbox unchecked for themselves. So I want this to be unchecked because I have to demo for these two record types, so that I have to demo the assignment, right? So I need to go through the selection screen. Now it's done. Okay, so that's about setting up the background for case assignment rule. Now let's go to our assignment rule and click on save. You see, the previous is now inactive and this one is active. If you have to go back to standard and make it active, then simply go to standard, click on edit, and make it as active. So like it says, at a time there can be just one assignment rule active, right? So if I go back, my case assignment rule becomes inactive. Okay, so it automatically does. So now, but let's go back to our assignment rule and make it active. Now we have an option to create entries. So entries contains ordered steps, and each step contains criteria and other configurations, and based on the criteria, once a given steps criteria is true, uh, the related actions are taken place, and the subsequent criterias for that particular record is skipped. So click on new, and this is order 1, and our case is that our context is that if a case record type is equals to HR related queries, I want this to be assigned to, so first step is to define the sort order, the next step is to define the criteria, and the third step is to define the user or the queue where to which this case will be assigned. So you have two options, select the queue, and since it is HR, so I'm going to select HR queue, and then you can select the email template which will contain the content. Whenever this case is assigned to this queue, they will be sent an email with this content. So let's select a standard template here. Okay, I'm going to select this support case assignment notification. Okay, now select predefined case team to add to this case. So let's go back to a case record first and show you the case team as well. And go to related, scroll down to case team, there has to be one. Okay, there is no, then it means we have to go to our case and add the case team as a related list here. So click on this gear icon, click on edit objects, you will be redirected to the case in object manager directly, and come down to where is case team? go to case page layout and okay, HR and go to our related list and search for case team. Yeah, so case team is not added down below, so just drag and drop it under related list section here. Okay, and save it. Let's do it for IT related page layout as well. We have to drop it under case as this related list section. Save it, and let's do it for case layout as well. All are okay with this page layout configurations. It should not anywhere you can drop, you don't have to drop on the top, but based on the sequence of sections. And now if I go back to my page layout, you see as of now we are not able to see the case team under our related section on this case record, so just refresh it. And now since we have made the configurations, I should be able to see the case, your case team. So here you can add a member or another team. Okay, so it says that you either need to create case team roles before adding them or have permission to access case team roles. Okay, fine. How do you create a case team, right? So again, search for case team in the setup and you can see case team role here. Click on it. We don't have any as of now, so click on new HR case team, and here you can define what kind of access they have. So either private, read only, redirect. For now let's have redirect and save it. Similarly, create an IT case team and have the example. Okay, what is predefined case team? Let's see. Like that. I go back to my case, just refreshing to okay, add member. Now I see options here, IT or case. So since this is an IT related queries, so let us add an IT case team here and save it. All done. Okay, let's go back. So we have created a case team roles, right? So this is the role, understand? So predefined case team. Now click on new and let's IT team and here what role we can. Now here you can add different users also, or you can add users and contacts with the user. And what kind of role you wanted to give them. So IP case team, save it. So what it does, basically, firstly you define a role. So role, what does role means, right? Role means it's it is a designation or position with certain privileges, right? So I'm going back to my case team rule and try to make it more meaningful here. So I'm going to edit case IT case team. I'm going to edit it as a manager. Save it. I'm going to edit this as well because this is just a role. Manager, team lead. No. So for manager has the option to read and write. Team lead has option to just read only. That's it. Now you have defined a role. So now go back to predefined case team. So here you basically create your team now. So my team is IT team, and I want to add team members within this team, right? So I can click on add one row. You can add multiple users. So here you can add either a user or a contact type of users. Now if you add a given user, right, and then you can define what is the role of this user. So so remember, a role signifies the privilege. So manager has what kind of permission? They can read and write on this case. If a user is a TL, then that user can just read this record. Okay, so I'm going to select manager who has read and write access. I'm going to add one more, and I'm going to add, let's say, a contact and search for let's say San Diego, and I just wanted to give a TL role. So this means this user who has a TL as the role will have just read only. That user will not be able to make an edit on this case. Now save it. You got it, all of you? Yes. Yeah. So let us go back. So first thing is to create a role which will have what kind of permission a given role may have, and then you create a team. And when you create a team, you give it a name, and then add users or contact, and you can define what is the role of each team members. Okay. That's all. So can we clone this or not? No. Okay. So let's create another one again and give it a team, and just add. Since I don't have any other users, I'm just going to use image 2. Okay. So now, if I try to save it here, let us do it again. Let's refresh. Team lead and manager. So these are the two roles, right? So if I have to give it to manager, okay. So who are my manager then? Okay, so I clicked on add member, right? So we had to give or we have to search it by the member name. But if you have to add a team, right? Click on it, and then we can see the different case teams which we had created. Yeah. So let's delete this because we wanted to add the team itself. So it is IT related query, simply add a team and you will get all the options. Select the IT team and then you can see this is the member of the case team on the case record. Okay, that's done. Go back to our settings. Where are you? Okay, search for case assignment. Open it up and click on new case record type equals HR related and queue, it should go to HR queue. You can select, you can create a new email template, customized one, or for demo I'm going to select the standard one. Standard means they are given by Salesforce. So case assignment. Now step 4 is optional, okay, but we went through it because it was a part of our case team, right? So, and then if you want to also add a case team, then you can add, else you can simply skip it. But since we have done this, so let's add HR team, okay, and save it. So you see the order one, if other case record type is equal to HR, then it goes to HRQ and HR team is also added on the case. Now next one is to configure the entries for IT. So let's do it. Roll number 2 and here the record type is IT. Add it to the IT queue or send it to the IT queue if the criteria is true. Select the default email template and just add the IT team. Save it. That's all. Okay, so now let's go back to our case. Click on new. I'm going to create an IT related queries. Fill in the mandatory details. IT query bill, anything. Okay, there is one other settings, we will talk about that. So there is called assign using active assignment rule. So if you go to a case record and go to the page layout, and since we are creating an IT, go to IT case page layout, and there is go to this layout properties, and there is a setting called here case assignment checkbox. So if we have to make it make the assignment rule run, we have to make it default as well. Okay, but I don't want it to show on the edit page. Uncheck it. Save it. Save it. Let's try to see. Okay, so you see, since it is a IT related case, okay, 1 minute, let us do it again. I'm going to clone it. so that I don't have to enter more data. IP related queries, save it. Okay, so earlier I had not refreshed the screen, so that's fine. Now you saw that it was IT related queries record type, and now it has been assigned to IT queue. Let's, as a part of the assignment rule configuration, see if our IT team has been created or not. So you see our IT team has also been created as a part of this case team. Okay, but if, yeah, this is one part, but if you have to create another HR related queries, and something. So since we have not made, remember that layout properties configuration, making the assignment rule to default, it means it will always fire. We have not made that configurations for the HR layout. Remember, since we have selected HR record type, so based on the record type selection in our last session, we saw that respective layout will also be displayed. Okay, so if this is not checked, right, and save it, you will see that it will be redirected to the default owner. Okay, so for that, what we have to do, we have to update that configuration so that the assignment rule always fires up. So we have just set up that layout properties for IT only, but let us set it for HR as well. It was not selected. I don't want to show it on the page because for the users, they may uncheck it, right? So don't show it on the page. And now if I try to run this again, this is our what? Okay, I'm going to clone it so that I don't have to fill the data again. Come on. If I select the HR, now it will be, see, we are not able to see that checkbox here because of that configurations, and let's save it. The assignment rule will be fired and it will be assigned to the HR queue. See, now it is no more getting assigned to me, right? So as long as the criteria is satisfied in the HR, in the case assignment rule, it will be assigned to the respective user or queue based on the rule entries. And if you have also configured the case team, then a case team will also be created here. Yeah, I will be added here. Okay, so that was all for the case assignment rule. Any questions? Otherwise, I will stop the recording. Any questions? Okay. Let's go back to the related modules. And as an home assignment, I think I had given, right? Where is it? Yeah, I had given, right? So make sure the home assignment is complete, and we will move on to our next part, which is auto response.